All right, so these are a few of the instruments that I use for carving the wax, festooning the wax. Hollenbach looking instrument. We got a harpoon-like instrument with a wax stripper, and the first one was, just a bigger number 7. And you can get these instruments from Amazon in that kit for $15. I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of different types of instruments that you can just be creative with, and there's no instruction manual of how to use these instruments. You basically just create your own way of using them, and that's what I do. So what I'm doing right now is just making like a reservoir of wax. I just fold a piece of wax into, fold it over 4 or 5 times. And the first thing I'm going to be doing is just smoothing over all of the gingiva. So, I'm playing this movie in four times the speed just to make it look faster, so you don't have to sit and watch this whole thing. So basically, you want to get the gingiva really smooth before you start. And what I'm going to do first is, after making everything smooth, I'm going to go and carve out, the border of the free gingival margin, and I'm going to do that first on all of the teeth. And you want to get into the embrasures a little bit, but right now you don't need a lot of detail. You just want to get an outline, because the next step is going to be dripping some wax into the shape of a free gingival margin. So you want to be able to see where you're dripping wax. That's basically the whole point of carving out the outline of the free gingival margin. So you want to make the palatal look pretty good too. Not it doesn't have to be as nice looking as the buccal and the facial gingiva, but you do want it nice and smooth. So what I'm doing right now is taking the wax stripper, and it's basically, I'm just using it as like a pen to just drip wax around the free gingival margin area. And you can see it's becoming pronounced. So just do that for all of the teeth. And if you drip wax on the occlusal surface or on the facial surface, you want to make sure to clean that up pretty quickly before it hardens. You definitely don't want any wax on the occlusal surfaces or the facial surface of your teeth. That's going to create a lot of problems. And you can see the marks on the occlusal surfaces of the tooth, the denture teeth. This is already equilibrated, so you want to do all your festooning last. Once everything's set, because you don't want to have to go back and change a tooth position after you're all done festooning. So you want to do your occlusal equilibration, and then the absolute last thing is going to be the festooning. So right now I'm using that number 7 to create root eminences. And you want to make prominent free gingival margins and less prominent root eminences, but you want to have some root eminences in there. Little camera trick: focus on something easier, and then still out of focus a little bit, but whatever. So keep going on the gingival margins. It's really important to see the necks of the teeth, not only for aesthetics, but so that you can know where to put your free gingival margin. You want to emulate the free gingival margin, what it looks like in a person. So you want to be able to see where your simulated CEJ is on your denture tooth. So again, I'm going in there, going into the embrasures, and using a lot of detail. This is another trick I like to do is heating up the wax stripper and just going around the free gingival margins to make them nice and smooth. This is not going to be your finished product because it's not going to be a sharp transition from gingiva to tooth, which the sharp transition from the gingiva to tooth is what makes the denture look real. But when you go in with a wax stripper, it's a very smooth transition. But this just helps you keep it neat, and it's really important to keep your work neat while you're working, so you can see exactly what you're doing. So I'm just going around again with the wax stripper, just making everything smooth, and then I'm going to refine it with a sharper instrument. And this kind of detail isn't too necessary right now, but it will be pretty helpful towards the end. But I like to just keep it clean while I'm working, so I can see what I'm doing. It just helps me visualize where I am in this process. So right now the gingiva is looking kind of poofy, and that's how it should look. You're going to then trim it down with a spoon, a discoid instrument, and you're going to create a more refined looking free gingival margins, better looking root eminences. So that's the discoid I was talking about. So what I do is basically I go in between the teeth and create little V notches, and you don't want to do just a straight up and down motion and end your stroke in the same spot every time. You want to move it in a different way every time so that you're not going into the same crevice, because if you do that, you're going to end up with a very sharp crevice, and it's going to look like a line. You're going to have lines between the root eminences. So when you stroke, you're pulling the wax, just go, aim for different spots when you're doing it, and don't always go to the midline. Sometimes go over the midline a little bit. Go past the midline. Don't go to the midline all the way. But the general shape is going to be a V between the teeth. With the apex down towards the papilla, and you're going to see those root eminences start to show up, and you're going to see the free gingival margins start to show up in your festooning. So, you want to trim down the wax pretty thin. In some parts it may be all the way down to the triad, and that's not bad. It's not a bad thing if you're that thin. Keep getting out of focus here. So, just making it smooth with the discoid and creating those root eminences. Going in that motion around the neck of the tooth to create that free gingival margin. And when you go down into the papilla, you want to use the sharp side of the discoid and continue the indentation all the way down into the papilla, so that the free gingival margin is not it's not rolling. It's nice and sharp, and it's defined for each tooth. Little tricks there. and instrument. So I got a real harpoon looking instrument here. Really good for creating a circular look to your wax. And just going in again to the making the free gingival margins, the root eminences even more defined. You want the free gingival margin to be more defined than the root eminences. That's going to result in a more natural look. If you want to have good, really prominent roots, think about which roots are most prominent in, everybody's smile. The canines are number one, the most prominent, and then maybe the centrals, but the laterals are really not prominent at all. And sometimes, you can see the premolars a little bit. But I'm also going to add in, a few of the frenum, and I'm going to roll the border around the periphery a little bit to create a nice look, and that's going to end up being more comfortable for the patient, and it's going to end up in creating a better seal. Also, you don't want a really sharp periphery. So I'm just continuing with the carving with the discoid and creating those root eminences and the free gingival margins. And again, with the instrument, you don't always land in the same spot on each stroke. And like I said, you want the triad to be pretty thin. Not super thin, but you want a pretty thin layer of wax over the triad, and that's about it. So just going into those embrasures again, with a pretty sharp instrument, getting any excess wax out of there. You can see the root eminences are more prominent now. The way the light reflects off of them, you can really tell that they don't look 100% natural, but they look a lot better than your run-of-the-mill denture setup. So I like to use this alcohol torch because it really shines up the wax, but also it's less heat than the torch, so it doesn't really melt the wax and create liquid wax, but it heats the wax so that it kind of fuses together a little bit. So what I'm doing right now is using the wax stripper to create a border, around the periphery of the denture, and I'm going to also put in some frenum as well. Alright, so again, using that alcohol torch to really create a nice smooth surface. And then I'm going to go back in with a discoid and just refine the anatomy again. And you could spend hours on this, but at the end of the day, you're going to send this to the lab, and they're probably going to change it, which kind of sucks that you're going to spend all this time doing this, but whatever. I mean, that's just the way it is. But if you want to learn how to create a nice looking setup, nice looking gingival contours, this is a way to do it. Basically add in your wax, with the gingival margins, add in your root eminences, and then just take it away with the discoid. Just refine the anatomy. Use a really sharp instrument for the free gingival margin contours, and brush it up real nice, and then you got a nice looking denture.